Ladies and gents, boys and girls, welcome back to Aram Training, the competitive rowing channel. I'm going to make it short. I cannot do a video analysis on any of the races. This is my Olympic recap of the Paris Olympics rowing 2024. Let's start with the men's single. I think Oliver Seidler, and that's what everybody wanted to see, has finally made his Olympic gold. Yes, his body position is probably not healthy in the long run, but who cares? He's fast. And that's what counts. Van Dorp's technique looks a bit weird in a single. Who cares? He's fast. If you make an Olympic medal, you're always right. You can't argue with that. What I found most impressive was the Russian sprint for silver. Forgive me that I don't call him AIN. I personally think that's a bit weird. Generally speaking, these Olympics were so much about politics, I'm fed up with that. These are athletes. They give everything they have, and they belong to a country. And politics should be kept out, just like all the other nonsense that went on at the Olympics. Now, from an athlete's point of view, what was fantastic, and I was relieved to see that Seidler winning his gold, he was the most composed of them all. He kept his cool, and everything he's practiced over the course, well, essentially over the last 7 years. He started really to show up 2017. He kept his cool. He was so dominant in the lead. He was almost untouchable. And he must have felt unbelievable pressure on the inside to be able to perform to his personal standards. I was really impressed with that. And chapeau to him and his father. Well done. I will do a video analysis on his rowing from the Hindley Royal Regatta, which took place just a couple of weeks prior to the Olympics. So stay tuned, and if you hit the notification bell, you find out when I post the next video. What struck me, as you can see here in this shot, is that Van Dorp seems to be unstable even in these flat conditions. His knees are very closely together, and it seems like he's always in an unstable position. If you compare this with Seidler, he looks like a stoic Greek-German philosopher doing his thing. Seidler makes rowing look easy. If you have no clue about single sculling, you think just everybody can hop in. No, you can't. But if you look at the Dutch, to me, it resembles a bit single sculling. In single sculls, you don't always find the best technicians. In my humble opinion, in that race, this is certainly the case. Van Dorp's technique works for a single scull. Super fast, Olympic medal. This is a dream. Everybody wants to accomplish that. So congratulations, and I draw my hat. This is very well done. But technique-wise, I would love to do a full video analysis on him. So I think there's lots of interesting stuff to be seen. What struck me as interesting is throughout many races, has become quite apparent that many athletes row with bent arms. Is it effective? No, it's not. But yet many people do it. Could they be more effective with loose and relaxed arms? I certainly think so. But if you look at the Russian, for example, even he bends his arm. I mean, we also see the rowers from the right side, so from port. And many athletes do that. They try to get their right hand closer to the body as early as possible. So many row with a more bent right arm than left arm. On a bar rower, you would very, very quickly have a lack of resistance on the left side if you start to pick up on the right side early. And that's a problem many of these athletes have. This is why they're always going a bit in a swivel mode. What I find absolutely fascinating is the Russian sprint to the line, Salate. What he pulled off is absolutely mind-blowing. And just put yourself in his position. You're racing. You're not allowed to race under your flag for political reasons. I don't care on which side of the spectrum you are. This is about sports. And many countries could be blamed for one or the other thing. So for him, it must be extremely satisfying to make a medal. It'll also a bit depressing, probably both. So for him, pulling off a medal with this heroic sprint to the line, that impressed me tremendously. if you get to watch that race, is absolutely noteworthy. And his technique is pretty good. He's got a pretty round low back, just like many athletes, but overall speaking, his entire posture is actually super clean, even when he was sprinting. Even then. So technique-wise, in my humble opinion, he's probably the best in this entire field. I wonder how fast Van Dort could be with a different technique. I'm really curious. Could he be possibly the fastest rower in the world, beating Seidler? And I think I'd have to answer this with a possible yes. If he'd be able to use his levers better, he would be significantly faster in the single. I know he's world record holder on one of these linear drive erg machines, but that's a different motion. It's not rowing. It's not a rowing motion, an actual one. And this shows when we look at the single. So his physique is unbelievably impressive. Yet I think he's got more potential. Well, we'll see what the future holds. What impressed me most in the women's single event was Emma Tweek's reappearance and making a medal. She's one of the most spectacular rowers in the world, I think. Being able to follow a career and come back, taking time off and come back and be successful. This is over such a long period of time is for me extremely impressive. If you get to watch her, Emma Tweek's technique is absolutely beautiful to watch. She uses her levers tremendously well, absolutely well, and she's not just a great athlete in terms of physics, but also in terms of technique and understanding, but also willpower. She's got the perfect combination. Besides Caroline Florin's victory in the single, which was a bit to be expected based on how the rest of the season went, I find it extremely impressive how Dutch rowing improved and started to dominate over the last couple of years. Their ability to put the right people in the right boats with the right people is tremendous. That's something I think that is only matched by New Zealand, but I will come to that a bit later. Generally, we'll talk about the nations in just a moment. I can't really do a video analysis on each individual rower. Again, what is very interesting is Caroline Florin's bent back. Reminds me a bit of Oliver Seidler, but her shoulder position is absolutely stunning. The way she's able to suspend her lat down into the shoulder blades, and she's able to transfer. This is absolutely beautiful, but I think the load on her back is substantial. It's absolutely substantial. Lithuania, if you don't know that, has a lot of pedigree in sculling. They've always been a very good sculling nation. And unfortunately, Olympic results have not always showed that. World Championship results did show this, but Olympic results not. Now, Olympic Games have kind of their own rules. They only happen every 4 years, and this is more about a mind game and mental stability than actual physical factors or technique factors. If you know that there's only a chance every 4 years, so you perceive it to be once in a lifetime chance, then the psychological component becomes just much greater. For Victoria Senkuta to pull this off must mean a lot, not just to her personally, naturally, but also to Lithuania, to Lithuanian rowing. I think this is a well-deserved victory. Absolutely. The men's four. How impressive was that American four? What a beauty to watch. This is the best thing I've seen coming out of the US, out of US rowing in a long time. How beautiful. Good mix of determination, great technique, leg drive to upper body mass. Their leverage in a sweep boat was just absolutely mind-blowing. You must not forget the Kiwi 4, which was excellent as well. I perceive to see a bit more leverage differences between stroke and 3-seed versus the US, but that's probably minor. Overall, I think it came down to physique, to pure physique. And what I'm also very happy about is the British sweep 4 medal. After the drama of Tokyo, I think this must have been a huge, huge relief to British rowing. For British rowing in general, that bronze medal in the men's 4, which was traditionally their dominant boat. I mean, there was a time, not all of you might remember that, or some of you watching might not have even been alive during that time. But there was a time where the men's 4, the British men's 4, was simply not to be beaten. There was a time where the British 4 won almost every single race between one Olympic Games and the next Olympic Games, including both Olympic Games. So the Olympic Games, the Olympiad, and the next Olympic Games. This is how dominant they were. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And now seeing the men's 4 coming back, I'm not British, I'm Austrian, but for me it's almost emotional because I grew up with that fantastic British 4, Pinsent, Foster, Cracknell, and of course Redgrave. Talking about Redgrave, Redgrave worked, if I'm informed correctly, for China. Not sure if he still does. Maybe you can put it in the comments. I was surprised to see China not making one medal in rowing. Not one. They did everything they could for the Beijing Olympics, and they became more and more successful. But Chinese rowing is completely out of the medals. So if anybody has any insights to that, please put it in the comments below. I'm very curious to know why, because I'm sure Chinese rowing is extremely competitive. They do want that. So I'm very curious why it didn't happen, what is going on, any background information. If you don't want to post it publicly, please send me a DM, a direct message on rowing.zone. My handle is @Aram. Now the women's 4 would have almost made the sensation complete for Romania. Romania was just beaten by New Zealand on the line, which shows, and I'm going to talk about this later, how Romania is starting or has already managed to continue where they left off in the late 90s and 2000s. There was a time where people actually really thought, never ever will the Romanian women's 8 be beaten. And there were times where you would see the stroke pair, I think it was the stroke pair of the Romanian women's 8, row the pair in the Olympics and the 8 and winning both. I hope I don't get this wrong, but certainly medaled. That is for sure. This is how dominant they were. And I saw this coming up. It already started 2016, 17, 18. You could see it at the Under-23 World Championships when there was just a surge of high-quality Under-23 Romanian rowing. You didn't see this then at World Cup level, but you could see that they were systematically building up a new generation of rowers. And they are following in the footsteps of, for example, Georgette Damian. This is unbelievable drill, quality, very hard training, like with everybody else, but also that typical Romanian style of the 90s and early 2000s of every problem is solved with a higher stroke rate. And it actually works. Their technique is so unbelievably refined that they can pull off essentially entire races, never dropping below stroke rate 40. Below 40, never. And still performing high quality rowing. Nevertheless, they were fourth here. So again, and that's for me super interesting, New Zealand pulled off another medal. I know a lot of people say, well, New Zealand they've got rugby and rowing, and that's it. It's a small country. It's a small country. How did they pull this off? Their rowing program is spectacular. It's outstanding. It's not like they've got endless numbers of rowers. They don't. And still, they managed to I said this before, they are able to put the right people in the right boats so that they harmonize. they managed to to make them work under pressure, and they consistently pull off medals after medals after medals after medals. This is unbelievable. What else is super interesting is that battle between Great Britain and the Netherlands. We will see a rematch of that in the women's quad, where Great Britain just snatched that from the Dutch. But here the Dutch win, which again shows what an unbelievable program the Dutch have put together, winning the women's four. Dutch rowing is on a surge. This will not go on forever. And people in 10 years or 15 years will remember the generation of rowers that was present in the early 2020s. The Olympic Games where the Netherlands dominated. You can't put it any other way. They are the most successful rowing nations at the Olympics. That is absolutely mind-blowing. And I think well deserved. Dutch rowing has been extremely strong for a long time. I remember when the Dutch were always about to be successful. They were always behind for the first 1,000 meters and had unbelievable sprints to the line, often just missing out on a medal or missing out on a podium. And that has completely changed. If you remember that, it was a time, it was late 90s, early 2000s. The Dutch always came over the second 1,000. And now they're dominating right from the start. It's a different mindset they've got. That British four is absolutely spectacular. And it's so close down to the line. And the Dutch just pulled ahead of the British just before the finish line. That's so close. So it was just not a photo finish, but it's so close. Because they're two absolutely high quality fours racing against each other. And it was also extremely close between New Zealand and Romania. You know which boat was most impressive? The Romanians. Not because they won, but the fact that the Romanians won the men's double. The Romanians in the men's double were nowhere 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, one more medal or two more medals, and Romania would have been the most successful nation in rowing. Can you believe that? Romania with a rowing program that is, yes, it's large, but you can't compare it, let's say Germany. Germany, I think, has 500 rowing clubs, if I'm not mistaken, or 600. France, 500 rowing clubs, if I'm not mistaken. The French really missed out on medals. That is a pity to see. They had exceptional quality rowing in recent years. And now, so this, I think Jürgen Grobler started to work for the French, if I'm not mistaken. So when he broke, how to put this politely, when the cooperation between Grobler and the British ended, he supposedly started to work for the French. But there's only so much you can do in a short period of time. Sometimes it just needs an Olympiad, probably two, before the grassroots work is visible. So that Romanian win, that Irish medal, and the Dutch medal again is absolutely hugely impressive. I think Dutch teamboat sculling is a masterclass of its own. But if you look at the Romanians, how clean they are in high stroke rates. Stroke rate 45. Only the Spanish can match this somehow with a 44. A stroke rate 45 in the open weight men's double. This is pretty spectacular. And their synchronicity, the synchronicity the Romanians have got is unbelievable. But you know what? What else surprises me? How a small rowing nation like Ireland is able to pull off not just a medal in the lightweight men's double, but also in the open weight men's double. They consistently find extremely good athletes, and they manage to make and keep them successful over a longer period of time. And that Irish medal in these two doubles, in my humble opinion, is absolutely spectacular. If you watch the women's 8, what you will realize again is the stroke rate difference. The boat with the highest stroke rate are the Romanians. The boat that's the fastest are the Romanians. This is something only the Romanians can pull off. I haven't seen this with any other nation. I remember a World Cup Lucerne a couple of years ago where the Romanians went to a 52 over the last couple of meters at the Lucerne World Cup. They can pull off extremely high stroke rates. And if I'm not wrong, maybe somebody who was in that 8 or knows somebody from that 8 can confirm or deny. I'm pretty sure that Romanian 8 would have had another gear if necessary. They could have brought up the stroke rate once more. I'm pretty sure about that because I've seen the Romanian 8 do this. I'm pretty sure the Romanian 8 did not have to go all out to win this. Impressive. The Canadians making another medal in the women's 8. It just shows the quality of that women's rowing program. I know if you're inside, there are probably a bunch of things to criticize. But hey, there are so many things to criticize with any rowing federation. There's always things that don't go well. Ultimately, what counts are the results. And the results speak for themselves. So this is quite spectacular what Canada was able to pull off. The Romanians leading by a boat length in the 8. Usually races in the 8 go like, okay, you race 2,000 meters, flat out, everything you've got, and then there's nothing in between the boats. Romania was able to pull off almost a full boat length and still, in my humble opinion, having another gear left. Open water before the finish line. Open water in the women's 8. Unbelievable. If you remember the Tokyo Olympic Games, that was a disaster for Team GB. Paris has brought them back on the map, and they were able to turn things around. They had their disruptions, they had their difficulties in the federation. It looks like they were able to solve this. And it looks like the results speak for themselves. Success in the women's 4, success in the women's 8, and we're not done yet. The New Zealand double looks interesting. It reminds me of Bond and Murray. How many people said, well, this famous Kiwi pair they looked weird and goofy. They were fast. And that's what I meant when I said New Zealand has an unmatched talent to put the right people together and find the best possible combinations. Yes, bow woman bends her arms tremendously. No, she doesn't use her levers to the maximum potential. Definitely not. She's just not engaging the muscles the right way, in my humble opinion. But hey, for her, it works. And she harmonizes extremely well with stroke. If you watch them row, no, it doesn't look beautiful. It reminds me of Harrison's story. Remember the 2012 Olympics in London? How they pulled off Olympic gold with this unbelievable sprint to the finish line. That women's double reminds me of New Zealand tradition to, some Kiwi boats like the Kiwi 8 at the Tokyo Olympics. Their technique was mind-blowingly beautiful. The technique in this women's double is not beautiful at all. However, I'm pretty sure if you look at the force curves, I'm pretty sure that they are matching extremely well. Just this one shot here, you can see both oars bending around mid-drive. They achieve it in completely different ways. And yet, in their different ways to achieve it, both of them probably not being as efficient as they could be, are faster than anybody else on the course. I reckon it's absolutely tremendous physique, outstanding physique. They have more overlap in matching force curves than anybody else in the entire field. And the third thing is, I think their competitiveness is simply better. How do I mean that? If you're an insider, please put it in the comments, or if you don't want to put it in the comments publicly, DM me on rowing.zone. My handle is @Aram. But I'm pretty sure with New Zealand rowing, the way they train, the way they have highly competitive sessions and lots of racing throughout their training. I think this brings out a competitive edge over other people. I'm not a big fan of racing all the time as a coach. I'm not a big fan of putting people through endless loads of intensities. And in all honesty, I don't know if they did that. I don't have the insight. But what I can tell you, and as a coach, you see this, if a team is used to perform under immense pressure, and in my humble opinion, this New Zealand pair was not so much found because they looked at because they looked at who's rowing the most beautiful way. They looked at whose force curves are matching up the best and who is matching up best under pressure and high performance conditions. And I believe that this is exactly what makes the difference. And if you end up with a double that looks ineffective, but is effective, I think that's something only the Kiwis can pull off. Is this a technique that you should imitate? No. But for them it works. And it works is mildly put. They are Olympic champions. I think these 3 parameters are mostly responsible for that. I would love to do a full video analysis. Unfortunately, I don't have the footage. So if anybody wants to send me training footage that I can use, I absolutely and happily do that. Something else. The Romanians, in my humble opinion, are, in terms of rowing technique, one of the best nations on earth. And I think they're not using their upper bodies to an extent that would be beneficial. I think if Romania changed their style to use a tiny bit more upper body, they could use more mass leverage around zero. That, on the other hand side, would be a trade-off to their stroke rate. So their stroke rates couldn't be as high. So I think they try to use less body weight in order to have high stroke rates. I think if they change their style to using a bit more body leverage at the finish, rather than going mostly legs to arms with a bit of upper body, reminds me a bit of the Dutch men's quad 2017 at the World Championships, where over the last 500 they had nothing to offer and they were simply outpaced by the other 3 boats. And from 2017 to 2018, the Dutch men's quad, the legendary boat, started to use more upper body swing. And I think if Romania could make that transition, I don't know who should beat them. Seriously, I don't know. This is another race where they almost went for gold. It just shows you how close they were to be the most dominant rowing nation 2024. Team GB, again, what is interesting, bow women in the GB double reminds me a bit of Ellen Campbell, 2012 Olympics. Bow woman shoots her slides quite a bit, but that actually produces pretty decent force curves. So if your preparation is not optimal, because this is your muscle memory pattern in terms of having 2 heavy hands at the catch, shooting your slides is actually a good way to solve this. You shouldn't have to solve it in the first place, but of all the ways to solve this is the most effective one. I've talked about this in numerous other videos. This is, I think, also surprising that there is one British rower who's technically not perfect. But that combination worked extremely fast. Look how beautiful that woman is using her upper body mass at the finish. How beautiful is that? The women's quad was probably one of the most exciting finishes ever. And I think for every fan of Team GB, this must have been a heart attack moment. And for every Dutch fan, it was a heart attack moment. The Dutch were leading all the way to the finish line. And then, over the course of a couple of strokes, the British were able to snitch that race last moment from the Dutch. I looked at their technique. There's not much in it. This is such high quality rowing. If there's something the Dutch can, it is the quadruple scull. I think the reason is that traditionally the Dutch don't use much upper body swing. And that is something you have to be super careful with in the quad. So that's a technique that is tailored for the quad. And I think this is why that boat suits Dutch rowing style so well. However, what the Brits can do is adapt their style to many different boat classes. And if you watch the finish of the British women, In my humble opinion, they are using more upper body mass. Yes, 1 and 2 seat are not as together as they could be, but they are using mass, and I think that's the reason why they're faster. It's the use of upper body weight, and it's that bit that counts. If you're able to throw your upper body weight into it in a controlled way, this is always, always, always faster. Again, the analogy of the Dutch main squat 2017, the World Championships, versus what they did 2018-19. One of the most beautiful surprises, and I'm very happy for my German neighbors, is the women's squat. I'm so glad to see this boat back on the map. I remember when Jutta Lau was the coach of that unbelievably successful German women's squad in also late 90s. That was just a different era. Some of you guys weren't even born then. They were the first ones to use force curves. And she had telemetry. She had force curves in the boat. That just shows how technically advanced German rowing was back then. And in my opinion, and based on my experience, using live force curves in a true rowing environment will make you faster than your competition. It's that simple. Because you get feedback you can't get anywhere else. And if you can see this as a rower, not just a coach, you can respond immediately. I think this is the future. I think this is exactly where it's going. I don't think so, actually. I'm 100% convinced. Now, seeing that German quad performing so unbelievably well, making a bronze medal, this must be a huge relief. A huge relief, because Germany ultimately didn't have many medals. They had Seidler, and that's really an individual project. It has nothing to do with the Rowing Federation. Just like Magdalena Lobnick's, the Austrians' bronze medal of Tokyo had not much to do with the Austrian Rowing Federation. Like many single scull projects, these are usually individual projects running outside the federation, which makes sense. So seeing the German Rowing Federation, which is heavily in the critique within Germany for various reasons, seeing them pull off a team boat medal outside the German 8 limited company, I still find this funny. It's almost a breakthrough for them, that I don't want to say their system works, but they are able to show success again. I think for them it's extremely important. The main squat, in my humble opinion, is a masterpiece of core double sculling. They're not perfect, but the closest thing to a perfect quad that you will ever see. Many people say that the Dutch quad is legendary. I absolutely agree. It is. That boat class suits their style so well, and ever since they started to use more upper body swing, 2017-18, I think that was about when they did that. When they lost at the Worlds 2017, only to be almost unbeatable later on. Yeah, they have individual deficiencies where they're not technically 100% perfect, but their force curve synchronicity is just unbelievable. And that's something we're going to rewatch in many years to come. And I think there will be years to come where the Netherlands will not be as dominant as they are right now. And this is when people will think back to the days of glory, and they will watch that. And they will think, oh, you know, the guys then, they were made of it. I think the Dutch rowing team is on a surge. They're on a run. They're in a flow just like the Romanians. That's the best way to put it. I think the Dutch team is in a flow and has been in a flow for a while. And I think it was triggered by that Dutch main squad. This is how it started. I think they started this visible success a couple of years ago. And I think that was the first outpost of, hey, Dutch rowing is on a rise. It's not just the men's squad. Now it's the women's single. It's the men's single. There are so many good Dutch rowers, just like in the lightweight men's double. We'll talk about this soon. And then what is also interesting, Italy. Seeing Italy back on the map. There were years where Italy was way more dominant than now. And the men's core double scull has always been one of Italy's prime boats. The race that got me personally started on my rowing technique journey was the Sydney Olympics race, Germany versus Italy. But the Germans had this perfectly upright style at the finish, and there was that sequence where the Germans and the Italians were side by side, same stroke rate, uh, neck and neck, and all, and you could see every time the Italians used their upper body swing at the finish, they were pulling ahead of the Germans, and the Germans could do nothing but respond with high stroke rate. But how high you want to go? That's where I think Romania has more potential left. If you watch the sprint of the Italians, again, it reminds me a bit of that emotional, typical emotional style Italian rowers have towards the finish. Watch it, you will know exactly what I mean. I can't show you here, unfortunately, but that is something typical Italian, and they do this with the heart in their hand. It was beautiful to see in Tokyo, in the mains 4, and it's visible here as well. This is how they just hold off the Polish. And the Polish, in terms of technique, they still have this typical early upper body use style, which is, in my humble opinion, not as effective as it could be. I think that's the reason why they are not up there with the Dutch. Their blade work is picture perfect, but that's what they focus on. But the body work, that could be improved. I think a boat with such potential, they could be the world's fastest, being an actual threat to the Dutch. The Italians, not so much. The Italians already are using that. I think the Italians could synchronize their force curves better. Then they would be up there with the Dutch. But the Polish, if they started to use their upper body swing together, again, a force curve issue, I think they are probably a greater threat to the Dutch than the Italians. The mains 8. Unbelievable to see the Dutch again, but that's almost a final to be expected. What was not to be expected was the German 8. The German 8 Limited Company, sorry, but I have to say this, missed out. They were fantastic in Tokyo, and this year, or for these Olympic Games, it just didn't work out for them. What went on, I don't know. But they were almost beaten by the Romanians. Again, the Romanians, they pop up everywhere. Even in the men's 8, it's unbelievable how good they are. What I thought was spectacular was to see GB win. That must be unbelievably satisfying. That rivalry between Germany and Great Britain was always neck and neck. And I remember in Rio, it was the British, and in Tokyo, it was the Germans. And it was always that neck and neck. And now the British win and the Germans are far behind. This must be unbelievably satisfying for the British and unbelievably heartbreaking for the Germans. Their prime boat doesn't work anymore. So the Germans are left with a medal in the women's quad and that individual project of the men's single. Hey, at least there are 2 medals. If Zeidler would not have been there, if he would not have switched from swimming to rowing, Germany would have a serious issue. You must not forget, this is a huge, I'm Austrian, this is my neighboring country. Austria has 50 rowing clubs? We're Mickey Mouse in terms of rowing. But Germany has 500-600 rowing clubs. I don't know how, I think they're close to 100 clubs in the larger vicinity of Berlin alone. Germany is a rowing nation, one of the biggest in the world. A big surprise to me is the Romanians almost beating the Germans missing out on a medal, and then the US bringing another high quality main sweep boat. Actually, they're prime discipline. Sweep rowing in the US, this is what they do all year round. 4s and 8s, 4s and 8s, 4s and 8s. That's all they do. And now finally, they actually show their high quality rowing at an Olympic stage. They say, hey, count on us. We're going to medal. We're going to win the men's 4. And we're going to medal in the men's 8. So the Dutch 8, which has gained so many followers, so many people follow that beautiful 8, only beaten by the British 8, which is their prime boat. So the British are back in the men's straight 4 and in the men's 8. That is, it's these individual country stories. It's so interesting to see the development. I mean, I've been rowing now for 31 years. I started when I was 10. I'm only 41 years of age at the moment. But I experienced all of the many ups and downs of different nations. And I remember when my coaches told me stories of other rowers and how it was before that. And there were times where Austria actually had really good rowers. Yes, Lobnik is excellent. And we had a lightweight women's double at the Olympics. And just them qualifying was sensational. That meant everything. And a friend of mine and a girl from my club are in there. So this is absolutely sensational for them qualifying. But we're not a fixed, medal candidate. Just like Slovenia. Slovenia is a country smaller than Austria. I remember when Slovenia was, especially in the men's double, they were almost unbeatable. They always medaled. Last time, if you remember, Spick and Chop, their technique was not beautiful, but that boat worked. That boat worked. And that legendary Slovenian double. And now Slovenian rowing is on a decline. Slowly, they're coming back now, which is great to see. But these ups and downs, if the longer you row, the more... It's just like with rowing clubs. Some rowing clubs have a great time and lots of youngsters and a good dedicated coach, maybe donors, and they get all of that going. And eventually the coaches become tired, go somewhere else, or they're hired off by a different club, and then that momentum is gone. So these ups and downs, just like with everything in life, there are very few teams and nations which are consistently successful. The Remains, for example, were nowhere a couple of years ago. Now, one of the most dominant rowing nations in the world. The Dutch were always very good, but now they're dominating the world. The British, they had their issues in Tokyo. And now they're back on the stage. They're not as dominant as they used to be, but they are extremely, extremely high up again. For the British, the way they see themselves is as, hey, we should win this all, because that's what they're used to. And I'm pretty sure because that is their self-understanding, it will be just a matter of time before they come back to that. Germany has issues at the moment. But I'm pretty sure eventually, just like Germany is suffering as a country overall at the moment, they will come back. I'm not a particular friend of Germany, nor am I an enemy or dislike or like them. I see this from a very neutral standpoint. So for me, it's very interesting to watch this ups and downs and ups and downs. And there will be a time where Germany is going to dominate almost everything in rowing. One of the most spectacular results of these Olympic Games was the men's pair. How these two did that, I do not know. I met them last year in Slovenia, in Bled, and they looked tired to me. They looked worn out. I mean, they've had 2 consecutive Olympic golds, going from the double to the pair, back to the double. Double didn't work. They kicked out the pair they had in Croatia just to become Olympic champions again. They were behind by open water just to beat the British and become Olympic champions again. What these 2 brothers, Martin and Valent Sinkovic, have achieved can almost not be put into words. Their mental strength is humongous, absolutely humongous. That is unbelievable in my humble opinion. Before I talked about how the Dutch quad was able to trigger success, the Croatian pair was not able to trigger that much momentum in Croatia. The British pair, it's one of their prime boat classes. their rowing is absolutely beautiful. If you want to watch almost perfect rowing in the pair, you have to watch that. And then the Swiss. What a small country. What a small country in rowing. How difficult it is to pull off success. How far behind they were at the 1000, and how unbelievable their finish sprint to the line was. Maybe being dragged along by the Croatians a bit. And then again, the Romanians. They were in there. They were not far behind. They were actually leading the Croatians at one point. That is, for me, that's only possible in small boats. And somebody who has no idea about rowing thinks, oh, well, all these different boat classes, just make a single and an 8, it's all good. No, you don't understand the dynamics of different boat classes. This is essentially a different sport. It's not the same sport. You have to understand that. So for me, this is one of the best examples that the smaller the boat class, the more things can turn around. And what was almost unbelievable in the women's quadruple scull or in the women's 4 became reality here. Reminds me of Storian Harris, that famous Kiwi double of the London Olympics. The Swiss being able to pull off a sprint like that, they were 5th at the 1,000 meter mark. They were 2nd last. To pull off a medal is unbelievable. Ireland winning the last ever Olympic men's lightweight double. Of all the nations in the world, I think it should have either been Denmark, but that's a long time ago, or Ireland. And I'm so happy for Ireland. They row like heavies, and it's unbelievable. They led so dominantly, and I know they were celebrated in Ireland. So this is Paul O'Donovan, Fintan McCarthy, this combination, and the O'Donovan brothers before, there's so much pedigree. And once these guys start to row heavy, this is going to be spectacular. Their technique, yes, they row with quite bent arms, the Irish, but for them it works. They are able to combine their force curves so well around mid-drive that for them this is the perfect way to accelerate that boat. And then if you look at that match between the Greek and the Italians, the 2 stroke rate kings apart from the Romanians and Spanish, that's so close, so close. The Italians just snitching silver from the Greek at the finish. And also Greece has huge pedigree in lightweight rowing. These 3 boats, and especially the Italians, making a medal in that lightweight double with Stefano Oppo, now with Suarez and not Ruta anymore. That, for me, was a glorious ending to an era. Something interesting, maybe you can confirm that or deny that, but as far as I heard, the only reason why World Rowing, or one of the main reasons why World Rowing adopted lightweight rowing, was that there was about to be formed a lightweight rowing association, independently and outside of World Rowing. And in order to avoid that possible threat to sovereignty, World Rowing adopted lightweight rowing. I don't know if that story is true. Please let me know in the comments if you know anything about that. The women's lightweight double, and with that I'm going to end my Olympic review, saw an Olympic title of who I think is technically the world's, or one of the world's, best rowers, Imogen Daisy Grant. One of my absolute favorites, and she's not just world best time holder in the women's lightweight single. Her technique is so unbelievably good. Seeing that pay off and seeing her winning Olympic gold is unbelievably satisfying for me personally. I see this from a coach's perspective, and she's such an exceptional rower. That is spectacular, and their opposition was not nobody. Again, the Romanians. The Romanians are a force to beat, unbelievable in the women's lightweight double. And that epic match between the Greek and the Kiwis, and the Greek just pulling it off. This race was like, it is exactly how everybody thought it was going to be. The Greek, with such a pedigree, in that, with such pedigree in that boat class, making a medal. The Romanians, again, also pedigree in that boat class. Romanian women's rowing is a force to beat. Look at that Greek sprint to the line and the British holding off. Absolutely beautiful to watch. Lightweight rowing at its best. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, I want to end this Olympic review with a couple of thoughts. And please let me know in the comments what you think. You probably all heard the story of the Olympic boxing on the women's side, if you can call it the women's side. I think that's a tragedy. And the Olympic Games started to lose their reputation a couple of years ago. And I think that downward trend is about to continue. It's being used as a political stage at the expense of athletes who give everything they've got. Be it that they're not allowed to carry their flag. Be it that they have to fight against unfair opposition. Be it that there are chants against athletes from a certain country. It's not the athlete's fault. Leave them alone. And I think if the Olympics want to stay relevant for the future, they have to stop being used as a political stage. They have to come back to what it's all about. Athletes giving their best. We've got enough to do to try to keep doping out of the equation as much as possible. It shouldn't be another challenge to keep politics out. With that being said, thank you very much for sticking around the end. My name is Aram. I'm looking forward to a hopefully very interesting discussion on rowing.zone. My handle is @Aram. I will post this video on rowing.zone, and I'm very much looking forward to a very open discussion on the rowing enthusiast platform rowing.zone. Next video, by the way, it's going to be the Zeidler video analysis of Hindley, where I analyze his technique and compare it to his 2023 style. Have a very good day. Thanks for watching.